Hello my dear friends and welcome back to another video. So we just got the Book of Boba Fett chapter 5 and honestly it may as well have been titled The Mandalorian season 3 chapter 1. Remember when Pedro Pascal described the Book of Boba Fett as The Mandalorian season 2.5? Well, this episode made it clear exactly what he meant, but I absolutely loved it. And while Boba Fett wasn't even in this episode, seeing Mando again was such a treat and an awesome way to bridge this show to season 3, while also at the end teasing that we may get Grogu next week. Bryce Dallas-Howard truly delivered the goods, and with all of the callbacks to the prequels and Star Wars Rebels, this felt right at home for me. There's also just something about the way Favreau writes Mando compared to Boba, where it's very clear he's in his element, he's way more comfortable, and it shows with the quality of the story. And ironically, this episode was a significant improvement over what we've been getting in recent times. And with Filoni directing episode 6 next week, I hope it just keeps getting better and better as we approach the season finale, chapter 7, in 2 weeks' time. So I'm going to save my full thoughts for the end of the video, so without much further ado and without any more jibber jabber, let's get into the breakdown. We begin at a Klatooinian butcher's, where there is a bounty on the owner's head. Mando is still taking jobs, and he repeats the line he did in The Mandalorian Season 1 to the myth-roll, "I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold." A scuffle ensues, and Din ignites the Darksaber. Now one question a lot of us have is, where is Bo-Katan? You'd assume she'd go wherever the Darksaber is, but I think they will answer that later. Mando beheads the Klatooinian boss, Caba Baze, and takes his head in a bag to the client that Mando was working for. We learn that she promised him vital info, the location of the survivors of the tribe who we haven't seen since season 1. And lo and behold, we see the armorer and also Paz Vizsla. In the next couple of scenes, we learn a lot. The armorer clearly knows the importance of the Darksaber and even name drops Tar Vizsla, who we first learn about in Star Wars Rebels Season 3. He was the first Mandalorian Jedi and the first wielder of the Darksaber, and apart from his historical importance, mentioning him by name in my opinion is forecasting Grogu's future. I believe, as I have done since Season 2, that ultimately Grogu will be a Mandalorian Jedi. Now we also learn something that was speculated upon by fans, but we finally get confirmation that Paz Vizsla is a direct descendant of Tar Vizsla. Now speaking of Grogu, Mando clearly misses him, and after being told that his Beskar spear, which he got on Corvus, is unacceptable as a weapon because Beskar should always be worn and not wielded, Mando requests that it be forged into something for Grogu. Now we never actually find out what it is, but it's wrapped up as a gift that Din is clearly going to give to Grogu next week. Could it be something that becomes part of a lightsaber hilt? We'll just have to wait and see. Now in this sequence we also get our first live action look at Mandalore through a flashback to the Great Purge, where the early Empire came into conflict with the Mandalorians. And one really cool Easter egg is the Empire's use of the KX series security droids. This is the same model as K2SO from Rogue One. The armorer also mentions the Night of 1,000 Tears, which was part of the Siege of Mandalore in 19 BBY. There is still so much mystery to the armorer. We all have many theories on who she could be, but one really interesting answer that she gives is when she's asked if she knows Bo-Katan. The armorer says that she's used as a cautionary tale, and she in part blames her and her clan for the downfall of Mandalore, for not following the way. This is kind of the expected response, but she also mentions how Bo was handed the Darksaber, but she doesn't mention Sabine Wren by name. We saw this in Star Wars Rebels, and as the armorer reiterates, you must never be handed the Darksaber. It should only be won in combat. Bo-Katan learned her lesson when losing the Darksaber to Moff Gideon, and it's also why she didn't accept being handed it by Din Djarin in Season 2. This time she wants to win it fair and square outright. Now while Sabine Wren was not mentioned by name, we will see her in the Ahsoka series, and connections are being set up. But we do get another reference to Sabine Wren when Mando complains that the Darksaber is getting heavier. Sabine Wren complained to Kanan in Rebels that the Darksaber is heavier than she expected, and Kanan replies that this is due to the crystal, because the crystal has not attuned to her. The armorer's response is a bit different to Kanan, telling Din that he's fighting against the blade, not his opponent. Now it's also worth mentioning that in this scene, the armorer is counting in Mandoa, the language of the Mandalorians. The armourer at one stage also mentions the mythosaur, which is an ancient legendary creature that is also the sigil that Boba Fett wears on his shoulder pad. According to legends, the mythosaurs were enormous creatures native to the planet of Mandalore. Said to have bodies the size of a small city, the creatures dominated the planet until the arrival of the Tong, a humanoid warrior race from Coruscant. Led by a warrior known as Mandalore I, they drove the mythosaurs to extinction, took over the planet, and began calling themselves Mandalorians after their leader. Now, after challenging Din for the Darksaber, Paz Vizsla and Mando have a duel. To settle things, the armourer asks them both if they've remained true to the way and never shown their face to a living soul. Mando obviously can't say he has, and he's expelled from the tribe. The only way to atone, in theory, would be in the living waters beneath the mines of Mandalore, but these have been destroyed, so Mando leaves, saber in hand. There is more to this plot that will be resumed at a different time, and I don't think this is the last we've seen of the armourer. So Mando heads to Tatooine, but not before he has to remove all of his weapons for an RX series pilot droid, which is the same model as the original Disney Star Tours droid that debuted in 1987. We see the same model in Rebels and also at Garth Whip's Sanctuary in the Book of Boba Fett's opening episode. Mando also repeats another line we've heard him say in The Mandalorian Season 1. "I'm a Mandalorian. Weapons are part of my religion." On board the shuttle, Mando has a deep reflective moment. He misses his son. And if we're going to get Grogu and presumably Luke, then it'll be interesting to see what progress Grogu has made, if any at all. I suspect he'll be back with Mando in no time. We're then taken to Mos Eisley, Hangar 3-5, where we get Peli Motto, who was an Easter egg in Chapter 3. As we've seen in the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, Amy Sedaris is excellent in the role. And once again, she was hilarious. We even find out Peli dated a Jawa, and their quote, "very furry." It was great to see R5 again, Treadwell, the pit droids, and also a BD droid. This is the same model as BD-1 from Jedi Fallen Order, and as expected, that model is adorable. The reason Mando is there is because Peli Motto promised him a replacement for the Razor Crest, and as Bespin Bulletin accurately scooped last week, it is indeed an N1 Naboo starfighter, a major callback to the Phantom Menace, the same model that Anakin flew. The benefit of this pre-Imperial model is that it's off the grid. They put together the parts of the ship thanks to Jawas, who managed to smuggle a few parts from the Pykes, who as we know are arriving in droves on the planet. The ship is fixed up, given a really cool aesthetic, and Mando takes it for a ride, and we even see the same course that Anakin did at the Boonta Eve pod race in episode 1. More specifically, we passed through Beggar's Canyon, and I must say, the visuals were spectacular. Mando is stopped by 2 New Republic X-Wings when he passes too close to a commercial shuttle, and in this scene, we get a very familiar face, Carson Teva himself, who was rumoured to be in this series, played by the amazing Paul Sung-Hyung Lee. I was a bit surprised we didn't get Dave Filoni's character Trapper Wolf, but funnily enough, Carson Teva remembers Mando. Just as he asks Mando to stop for questioning, Din jumps to hyperspace. Our episode ends when Fennec pays a visit to Din. As we saw at the end of Chapter 4, Boba and Fennec are looking for muscle, and Din is the first person they want to ask. Realising the request is on Boba Fett's behalf, Din agrees, even refusing payment, presumably because Boba helped him get Grogu back in Season 2. But Din says before he can help, he's got to pay a visit to a little friend. That's right guys, Grogu is coming. Think back to all of those leaks that were saying Grogu is in this show, he was on all of the crew merch, and it's looking like now he's a sure thing. What a tease and set up for next week's episode, and this show is really going down to the wire, especially when it comes to setting up the battle between Boba and the Pykes, and of course whoever is behind them. I think it's going to be Qi'ra, and I also believe that Cad Bane is working for them. So we probably are going to get a Cad Bane Boba face-off, just like the deleted scene of the Clone Wars. So as for my rating, this episode was a lot of fun. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10, simply because Mando is back, and the quality in terms of visuals, directing, and writing was such an improvement of the last 4 episodes. I know it didn't feel like a Book of Boba Fett episode, but I'm rating it just on the quality itself, and also the enjoyability. It wasn't even part of the Book of Boba Fett until the last 5 minutes, but the episode made me realise just how much I've missed The Mandalorian. Bryce Dallas-Howard is a superb director, and there were so many awesome callbacks and Easter eggs. this. And still, the world building was impressive. Loads of new elements, like that ring planet that reflects light to create artificial day and night. It was something you'd expect to see out of the imagination of Gareth Edwards, but it fits in surprisingly well in a show like this. If this is the quality The Mandalorian Season 3 is going to have, then I'm on board. But going back to the Book of Boba, in terms of where we go from this episode, with 2 episodes left, I suspect we're going to be taken to Grogu, but I think it's just going to be a visit. I can't see him reclaiming the child just yet, especially if he's going to have his hands full helping Boba. I guess we're just going to have to find out, but for me, this was 10 out of 10. Lots of fun, loads of callbacks, a great way to reward fans who've seen the Clone Wars and Rebels as well, and I loved it. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Did you enjoy this episode? Why so or why not? And tell me your marks out of 10. Just as I do with every episode, my dear friends, we will be talking about the nitty-gritty of this episode more in depth in videos to follow this week, so look out for those. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, the link to my Patreon is down there in the description, but otherwise, may the Force be with you all. I'm Star Wars Meg, this is the way.